Hello, planet Earth. Jim Channon here. This is the first of a two-part series on the homestead. Why do I use the word homestead? Homestead means that there's something interesting you're going to do with the land, almost as much as a small farm. And at the same time, we are talking about the human beings who live there. More like a ranch family or an old farm family, but it's definitely a mixed family, mixed motives, mixed blood, and capable of teaming up to work on interesting projects. But in the end, what you get is a homestead which grows the food you need, has the energy saved that you need in case of an emergency, has the beauty you require to live in paradise, and has a lot of fun elements so that you can have an exciting, dynamic life. It's a lot to ask of a piece of land, but basically it comes only as a result of having seen it first in your mind and then taking care of it one piece at a time. So we're going to look at a 3-acre parcel. It's a demonstration. I've actually built one where I live, and so I know about the pieces and somewhat about the order of the pieces. So let's get into it, shall we? Here we have sort of 3 phases of development, and I want to point out that this last phase is the last thing you do. So building is not something you do first. Building is something you do after you've passed through the stages of finding the magic on the land to start with. And I don't care whether you've come across somebody who has a beautiful old farm and they need a little help, so you're starting off with them, or if you've got a big piece of pasture land to start with, it actually has some undulation in it, some things you have to find, but you're going to be looking at some things in the beginning. And here's what I propose you look at in the beginning. First of all, have a vision about what you are going to do with this piece of land, because it might just be the piece of land that you end up spending the last 20 or 30 years of your life on. And so you want it to nourish you in all possible ways. And that includes you and the family that will come with you. And the point is ask questions about what is your story, what is the story of the people who are with you, and what is your collective story? What are you becoming by virtue of occupying this land, and what is that story? Now you're looking, of course, for home site selection, and that's something that is in your first order of business, but not before you notice that there are sacred sites. And if there is a grandfather tree or a grandmother tree, you definitely want to mark that off and preserve it. If there are magical view planes that go places, you want to tape off those magical view planes. You don't want to plant any big forests in those ways. It's so easy to get excited about planting and wake up 10 years later not able to see any distance from your house. And then finally, in the tradition of ancient land practice, to see if there's some sanctuary options. For instance, is there a piece of low ground on the property that allows you to put in a pond or a lake or a water feature of some kind? So the point of phase 1 here is to find the magic. Mark off the magic. Make sure it's in the site plan, and don't let builders or contractors or road makers come and drive all over your magic before you've got it all planned out. So at the end of this reconnaissance phase, this walkabout, I recommend you put a small trailer or a good tent or a small shack on the property in a place where you can see everything, because what you're going to do next is take at the long-term elements that need to be planted. For instance, windbreaks need to be planted. The trees need to go up, because if the wind is prevailing, you want to start the growth on the trees. And sometimes you can get a good windbreak up in 6 to 9 years. But that goes in very early, as well as the beginning over here of what we call agroforest stands. Now, the most powerful new way to farm is vertically. You put things in the ground, on the ground, above the ground, way above the ground, and way, way above the ground. And that has all been covered in another video on the agroforest. But the point of the agroforest here is to begin to create privacy for the home site. And let's say the home site is somewhere around here. And you want also another very, very powerful thing to plan for is where you're going to actually go into the land and take some out, which is terraforming. Take some out in order to make your view from your major dwellings the most dramatic possible. If you've got a flat piece of land and you only imagine that you can see what's straight, flat in front of you, imagine what happens when you dig into the ground. You increase your view plane by maybe 45%. Now you will want also to pick major pathways through the property based on how beautiful they are and how much they actually service the view planes that you've already protected. And then by the end of all this, you will have found all of the building sites that you need, because we're not only talking here in the permaculture sense of having one home site, but maybe there's sleeping buildings, maybe there's a cooking building, maybe there's a farm building or two that will allow as many as 12 people or so to live on the property. So now you should have a map. This should all be carefully sketched in. And now you're ready to meet with the utilities guy, meet with the builders, meet with a guy who's going to do your water features, etc. And now you can begin to cite very specifically where, for instance, the water feature will go, whether the utilities go underground or whether they go above ground, etc. And then where the major buildings are, where the major gardens are, and in this case I'm talking about edible landscaping here mostly. So we've got agroforest stands and edible landscaping. Where the sweet spots are, and this will be explained in video number 2, because there are to be a dozen magic places where you can be on your land in a very specific way and feel the richness of it. We call those resonant field zones. Basically, you're looking for not functional power here, you're looking for energetic power, you're looking for beauty, and you're looking for elements of fun. And eventually then the pathways have turned into more specific roadways, and by golly, I wouldn't concrete any of those in or asphalt them in until you've established yourself a little bit. Every pathway you make that goes to a significant part of your property, make it big enough for a truck. Don't pinch yourself out on movement and mobility, and don't pinch yourself out on your view planes. So what I've tried to explain here is that you don't jump on a piece of property and set your big house in the middle and run a straight line from the main road and run telephone poles in. If you're thinking about it in the long run, you'll find out there is great value in seeing the deeper potential of the land. We want to convince you to build something magic. We want to convince you that there is a partnership you can have with nature before you just go into rote zoning building codes. We don't need more unsurvivable land patterns anymore. We need really juicy homesteads with really loving families on them. And that, by the way, is not only the secret to paradise, it's the secret to surviving. If we could do what's never been done, then we